This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, and today we have a guest that has been requested for many years. I wanted to do this one in person, but unfortunately it hasn't worked out, so we got it on Skype. He's a 39-time WWE Hardcore champion, two-time ECW heavyweight champion, former NWA world champion, former WCW US lightweight and tag team champion, among tons of other titles he's held. He is known as Johnny Polo, Raven, Scotty the Body, tons of names. We'll get into a bunch of them. But he's best known as Raven, though. How are you doing today, sir? I'll give you some applause.
Thank you.
I heard you on another shoot interview say you like applause during your introductions.
Yeah, I probably wasn't being serious, but thank you anyway.
And there is a lot of shoot interviews of you online, but I had about 500 fan questions for you. Obviously, there's not going to be time for all of them. So we're going to be all over the place asking only fan questions today because I like to try and please the fans.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? The fans don't get enough credit, I don't think. They're not like, I think people think they're not as smart as people think they are, but they're not as dumb either. You know, they're right in the middle. The average fan is right in the middle. Like, they're not like, what I mean by that is, you know, fans are always considered smizard. Do I need my head? I don't think I need these, do I? Let me see.
I never notice any feedback when I don't wear them. It really depends.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Because
you might need them because now I hear myself on your end.
Oh, okay, then let me put them back on. It's weird. It's weird how the whole system feedbacks. If like it closes the loop on the system, even though you know it shouldn't make a difference if I'm wearing headphones, but it completes the circuit because I got a microphone too, because you know for my podcast. So they say it works. The sound works better. But what I was saying is, like the fans that think they're smizart, that think they can figure out every angle. They're not anywhere near as smart as they think they are, not to be denigrating to the fans, because by the same token, they're nowhere near as dumb as the boys think they are. Like the boys will do angles and then they'll skip a step, you know, or a piece of it, or they won't have an idea for an outcome and they think, oh, don't worry about it. The fans are stupid. They'll be fine with it. No, they're not fine with it. That's how you lose audience members. But by the same token, you know, like when I first went to ECW, you know, all the fans thought they knew every move that was going to be made, like, you know, and so it was so easy to fool them because I know what's coming next. So what we would do, whatever they expected, and then we would do it, except there'd be a kick out then instead of and so they're easy to fool, but they're also not fools. So.
Right. And there are, of course, a large percentage of developmentally disabled fans, but there's also lawyers and doctors. And then there's the ones in the middle. So they're all over the place.
Yeah, it's just, I always get upset though, not upset. I just feel like the boys underestimate the fans way too much and overestimate them by the same token, which is weird.
True. Well, a lot of fans, since we're based in Canada, wanted me to ask you about your time in Al Tomko's Vancouver territory.
I'll tell you, I got to say, the Canadian fans are so loyal. It's crazy. Like they know what they want. And it seems like they're always getting shit on by the WWF. Like they're always bringing up Montreal. You know, they're always referenced, like, you know, I don't know. I think the Canadian fans are like, you know, they're the kind of fans you want to have everywhere. I mean, and I'm not trying to suck up the Canadian fans because I doubt I'll be in Canada in the next 5 years. You know, the coronavirus, you know, the border's closed. But I'm just saying, but they're really good fans. They're like I know I'm not answering the question, but we got 2 hours, so I can just babble. But like Pittsburgh fans are the worst. Like they don't make any noise. Like I remember one time I was there and Kurt Angle was on top as a babyface in Pittsburgh. And the audience made so little noise. It's like, why do you even come to the show if you're not going to make any noise, you know? Especially, I mean, Kurt Angle, like, I can understand maybe they didn't want to pop for my match or the next match. But then you get the Kurt Angle on top as a babyface who's a local hero, and they still sat on their hands. So Pittsburgh's shitty fans. Canada has good fans. But Al Tomko, I'll get to Al Tomko now. Yeah, I left Florida Championship Wrestling, and Al Tomko, I'd met him. Not Al Tomko. I met Moose Moralski when I was on a tour Hawaii that we did, and Moose wanted to bring me in. So when I finished up in Florida, then Moose they said, "Oh, we got a spot for you to go to in Vancouver, working for Al Tomko," which I didn't even know there was an Al Tomko. Like I didn't even know there was a Vancouver, BC wrestling. And so I drove from my house in West Palm Beach, Florida, all the way to Vancouver, Canada, which is like ridiculously long.
And of course, John Tenta was there at that time, according to some reports I've read. Any memories of him?
He wasn't there, I don't think. I was only there a
Okay.
month. I was only there for 1 month.
There was a fan that said they saw you on a show that John Tenta was also on, but that was a long time ago. So
I think he was at a show. Like I think he was backstage. I met him. I think I met him once there, but I don't recall him working. Um, yeah, I don't know.
and for the Portland territory, Billy Jack Haynes is a popular guest on this show. Did you ever cross paths with him in Portland?
Yeah, I almost had to fight him one time, but thank God we didn't have to fight. Me and Billy get along really well, like because Billy, I guess, is I always got along well with the people who got in trouble, like like the people who were colored outside the lines, and then one day Art Barr ribbed him and blamed and pinned it on me, and Billy Jack's like, we got to talk, and I'm like, no, I forget exactly how it went, but then so I had to go wrestle, and so I was shitting my pants wrestling because I had to wrestle, just trying to get through the match, trying to remember it because I knew I had to go talk, fight, possibly fight Billy Jack afterwards, and then went up to him. I said, hey, listen, I said, I didn't rib you, I go, but look, if you want to fight, I'll fight you. I mean, you're going to kick my ass. I mean, that's obvious, but I will fight you just, out of honor. But I mean, I didn't do it. And he believed me, and we were always good buddies after that.
Was he really a cocaine dealer? Because he's self-professed.
I'm sure he was.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah, I would tend to believe the adventures he had.
What about, have you seen any of these videos that he alleges he was involved in the Boys on the Track murders in Arkansas?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay. Now, you mentioned Art Barr. He's a pretty controversial character. What are your memories of him?
I liked Art a lot. Me and him really always got along, but there was always a little professional like not animosity, professional competition, between us. But he, I mean, I don't know how, Art was known for telling you what you wanted to hear. He grew up in the business, but he did tell me that he based a lot of the American Love Machine character on Scotty the Body because he always wanted to be a character like pretty boy, chicken shit heel but womanizer kind of character like I did in Portland, and so he always told me that whether it's true or not, but you know I if it is, I'd like to think it is. I'd like to hope it is, and that's a great compliment from him.
I actually saw a clip of you on Twitter from Portland a couple weeks ago that a fan had uploaded of you. You may have seen it too, coming to the
Yeah.
ring dancing with the girls. And I was actually impressed with your dancing ability.
Yeah, I learned how to dance early because like black guys always dance with girls, but like when you're younger, white guys never want to dance with women, and so women always have to dance with each other. I don't know how it is now because I don't go to the clubs now, but back when I was 18 to 25, guys would never dance with women, white guys. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to dance. I'll teach myself how to dance just so I can hook up with more women.
Well, since you talk about that now, I'll probably get into it a few times during this, but you've been known as quite the pickup artist over the years. Did that start at an early age, or did you kind of gain your skills in that domain as time went on?
I started that in high school. And really I got good at it in college. I mean, let's face it, if you don't even have to be good looking to pick up women, you just have to be charming. I mean, if you're charming and personable and funny, or amusing at least, but mainly if you're just, it's also confidence. I had way more confidence than was deserved, but but that's you know, I don't know. Yeah.
Any tips for picking up in the gym?
Well, now I don't even know. Now, I mean, now it's such a different, with the Me Too movement. It's like, women sometimes can be offended. I mean, I think they should be taken seriously, but I also think that you know if a guy like sometimes women get mad when guys hit on them, but if the women had to hit on men, it'd be much harder. Like all the onus is on us. It's on men to hit on women, or otherwise, there's no connection. Because women don't usually hit on men, or at least not in my generation, they didn't. So you don't know until you get turned down. Now, if you keep harassing the person afterwards, that's harassing. But if asking, but to be I don't know. It's really it's a tough. I would hate to be 18 to 30 in this in this time frame between the coronavirus and the Me Too movement, and I think that, and I'm glad there's a Me Too movement. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I think I've never understood how women could be treated less than equal, or the Black Lives Matter. I can never understand why a black person or a woman should be paid less than anybody else is ridiculous. Everybody should have the same opportunities, other than, nepotism and stuff like that. The, but I've never even, I couldn't even fathom that. So it's good that that's happening, but it's also, it can be taken too far to the extreme. And so it's got to go. It's, like I remember, let me just say that like it goes, the way I see it is because things were so bad for the situations for women. Now it's gone so far. It's the pendulum swung the other way, and now it's got to swing back to the where it should have been in the first place. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah. And for Jimmy Jack Funk, I believe he was around the Portland territory a little bit when you were there. Do you have any memories of him?
Actually, I met him in my first territory was Memphis, and he was the like I my first match in Memphis was a TV match, and then my second match was I went I was supposed to go 4 minutes, and I went like a minute and a half. Forgot everything that I had ever learned about wrestling, and just terrified, and got through the match, and they're like, "You only went a minute and a half," and I'm like, "You're supposed to go 4." I'm like, "Oh," you know, and tried to cover up, and then that night though. I worked with Jimmy Jack Funk, and I'm like, oh man, he's going to realize I'm terrible. He's not going to want to work with me. And it was separate dressing rooms, so there's no way to communicate. All they give you is a finish, and then you go out there and you just make it up on that one you're on the fly. And I'd only had like 7 to 9 matches before I even got to Memphis. So this was like my 10th match, my 11th match, maybe ever. And we go out there, and he's this big imposing guy, you know what I mean, who's been around for years, and I'm terrified. And then he starts squeezing. He has an arm bar or a wrist lock, and he starts squeezing my wrist. And I look at him like, "Why are you squeezing my wrist?" And then he squeezes it again, and I'm like, and he looks at me and I squeezes it again, and I'm like, maybe he wants me to reverse it. And I reversed it, and I remember seeing like him, like almost a smile came on his face, like within the context of the character. And I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm starting to get this thing. Like not a clue. Still had no clue. But he carried me to like a 10-minute Broadway, and they go, wow, they thought I was really talented until my next night when I had to work with these other guys, and they were as bad as I was, and they're like, ah, you're terrible. And so so I became a jobber for my first 2-3 months in Memphis before I moved to Florida Championship Wrestling and started being used.
People like to tell this story that supposedly Haku ripped out his eye and he only had one eye. We even say he's dead now. Obviously, he's still alive. But did he have one or two eyes when you were in there?
No, no, no. What actually happened was, from what I was told, was the eye came out of its socket. But you can put it back in. The eye can pop out of the socket, and it's held on by veins and crap and stuff, I guess. And he put it back in his eye. So that's so he had two eyes, but supposedly that's what happened. But I think I can't remember if I asked him about that, or if I don't think I even knew that back then. That was my first territory. But he may have told me that story anyway. I don't know. I mean, but it seems like I know from a reliable source that, from pretty reliable, that probably happened.
Now, you mentioned Memphis. Jerry Jarrett's become really popular in recent years, a popular topic, anyways, because of Bruce Pritchard making fun of him. What's your opinion of Jerry Jarrett's mind for the business?
Jerry's got an amazing mind for the business. He was so revolutionary, so ahead of the curve. You know, um, with TNA, I think the business has slightly passed them by, but he should have been used as a resource, though. I think, but Jeff and Jerry didn't get along at the time. So there's a lot of D stuff, but long story, my opinion of Jerry Jarrett though is the guy has a great mind for the business. I mean, like when he was the booker in Memphis, he they were selling out the Memphis Coliseum, 11,000 people every Monday night, and that's not a big market. Memphis is a small market, you know. I mean, they're doing something right, between him and the King. And to me, and what I say about the King is I think of all the workers I've ever seen, the King's the best worker I've ever seen or been in a ring with ever.
And I know you're being sincere there because I've heard you say that many times. You're always putting him over, and you're not the only legendary wrestler that puts him in that category.
He's so he's really underrated for people who've never been to Memphis or know it. Memphis, like back in the day, like he could talk people into the seats. He was a great baby face. He's a great heel. Like it just he was so amazing. He's as big as Hogan was everywhere. In Memphis, he's bigger than Hogan was everywhere. Comparatively, or Austin. He was that big. They used to do a 60 share on TV. That's ridiculous.
And for WCW, for your very first run there, how did the process go of you being recruited into that company?
Um, so I left Portland Wrestling after 2 years there, and I moved to Atlanta because I figured that's where WCW was, and that's where the hub of indie stuff was. And I figured I wasn't going to get into WWE because I was too small. So I figured WCW was my hopeful goal. And but I fucked up when I was in Portland. They wanted to bring me into WCW, and I didn't think I was ready, so I didn't go in. And they took it as me being like I'm too good for them. So then I had a bad reputation already. And so then when I wanted to come in, when I thought I was ready for it, I didn't realize that when opportunity knocks, you have to take it, whether you're ready or not. You can't just wait. Like I wanted to stay in Portland and stay in the smaller leagues and get really good. So when I showed up, I'd be ready to move to to what I considered the highest positions on the card, or as highest position as I could get. What the highest position I could get on the card. But so they thought I was a dick because I totally did business the wrong way. And I let somebody else take care of it for me, and they didn't. And I learned a lesson from that. And so DDP was a good friend of mine. We became good friends in Atlanta at the gym, and he got Dusty to finally give me a tryout. And then but after 2 years in Portland, I knew all the tricks of the trade to make somebody look good. How to bump, sell, how to make a squash match, because that's what it was basically. Somebody was just going to squash me, to see how I looked, or a competitive squash match, I guess. But I knew how to make them look good, how to make the other person look good, how to make myself look good, because Portland, I spent 2 years working 6 nights a week minimum. Sometimes they were 5 nights, but usually it was six, and sometimes it was 7 nights a week. So, I worked over 300 nights a year for 2 years. I mean, so I had 600 plus matches in 2 years, which now guys in the indies are lucky to have 600 matches in a career.
Yeah.
But so you really learn how to work when you work every night with veterans, because it was all guys who it was Buddy Rose, Colonel De Beers, the grapplers who I really learned how to work and book from. He was a brilliant guy. But Al Madrill. So there was it was either guys on the way up or guys on the way down. And so you really, if you were smart, you could pick somebody's brain, you would learn how to work. And so I got the tryout. So anyway, I got the tryout and I pulled all the stops out, and Dusty hired me, and man, he had big plans for me too. Like Like he was telling me the plans he had, and DDP was in the room, sitting at the table with us, and DDP's kicking me under the table as Dusty tells me all the plans he has, and like he's kicking me so hard that I'm trying not to sell it, and but then Bill Watts came in, and Bill Watts didn't like me, so because Bill Watts didn't like chicken shit heels, he's all into tough guys, and so he gave me the heave ho, even though I helped train his son Eric, which is bullshit, but whatever. Anyway, he gave me the heave ho, and then I was back to Memphis, which was like the Hotel California. You could check out, but you can't ever leave.
Back there when Eric had his little skirmish with Rick Rude.
What skirmish with Rick Rude?
Supposedly they had like an amateur wrestling match in the locker room, and supposedly Eric got the better of Rick Rude.
I don't think I was there for that. I was there for that. But I was there when Rude got in a fight after a show. I was riding with him, Nash, and Spivey, and it was really like he was beat. This guy started shit with him, and then Rude had to like suplex the guy onto like off a hill, and then went sliding down the hill. It was really funny, but but it was like a comedy of errors kind of fight. But Rude was killing the guy, but it was more comical than anything watching it because they're fighting in on a sandy hill and like nobody can get any traction. It was ridiculous.
How did they end up on the hill?
That's where the cars were parked. It was like on the side of it, like on a little bit of a hill, and you walk down the hill to get to the arena.
Okay. Did Rick Rude give you any advice in the business when you were back there?
No, not really. He used to call me Flaming for short for Flamingo. And one time we were in London, and we and it was weird. It was right when that movie came out with the transvestite, the guy falls in love. What was it? It was like a big where the guy's dating her and he thought he was dating a woman, but it was really a man. The Crying Game. The Crying Game. Yeah, it was a huge movie. Anyway, so we're in England and we're at this club, the Hippodrome, and these two gorgeous chicks start hitting on us. And then so as we're getting ready to walk out the door with them, the bartender calls us over and he goes, "Hey," he goes, "they've had it lopped off." We're like, "What?" They go, "They've had their penises lopped off." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And so we changed our minds. We weren't very woke back then.
Now, for Steve Austin, I heard you on his podcast. He recently re-uploaded one of your episodes. You guys seem like you were very close in WCW. How did you guys end up gravitating towards each other?
How do we rode together? We just clicked. We just got along, I guess, because comedy. We both, and music and me, him, and Pillman used to ride together. So we just got along really, really well. And then we had hoped, like me and Pillman had hoped to be a tag team because since we were smaller guys, we weren't going to get the kind of push and make the real money, because I was only 220 then. And which was small then, and Pillman was size, and so we wanted to be a tag team. And Austin, and Austin was the U.S. champ or whatever. And then Watts came in, and Watts decided to make those two guys a tag team. Got rid of me, and so it happens. Whatever.
Steve usually will put down his Stunning Steve Austin gimmick from those days. What did you think of it?
He was just talented. I mean, you just knew, like, he was just so talented that you knew, like, he was a star,
So you eventually ended up in WWE. Who recruited you to there after your WCW run ended?
After WCW, I went back to Memphis, and when I was in Memphis, they had like a exchange deal with WWE. So WWE came calling, and maybe Johnny Polo, but I never thought that was me at all. Like, I thought that should have been Shane McMahon. He should have been Johnny Polo because that would have been the perfect character for him. But on the other hand, I actually became a legitimate member of the Mean Street Posse in real life because the Mean Street Posse were really Shane's best friends. Like that he grew up with Pete Gaz and Joey Abs and Rodney. And since I lived since when they brought me into WWE WWF at the time, they made me a producer of associate producer of Monday Night Raw, and they so I had to move there, and and so I became really good friends with them. And so I always say that I'm an actual member of the Mean Street Posse.
Now, did they, like, as soon as they hire you, that was part of the deal? You were also going to be a producer the entire time?
No, what happened is Lawler took some time off, and so Vince brought me in as a commentator to work with him, and then he really liked the fact that I came prepared. I had, was clever, creative. I had, bits that I brought. I was like, hey, Vince, if I say this, if you say this, I can say this, and he likes that. And he likes prepared, people who prepare and do their homework, and so they said, we're going to make you an associate producer of Raw. I was like, all right, so I got paid six figures, and got an office on the fourth floor of Titan Tower, the executive floor, and my office is right across from Pat and Bruce's. But it was not what I wanted to do. And as soon as they took me off TV as a manager, that's when I knew it was time to quit, and because I didn't want to. I got into business to wrestle, so I knew I had to reinvent myself, and that's when I came up with Raven, and changed my career, changed my luck.
We've heard some people like Vince Russo say that Bruce Pritchard can be a pain to deal with behind the scenes, kind of being a real politician. Did you experience any of that, or were you on good
Yeah,
terms with him?
no, Bruce hated me. Him and Pat did not like me, um, and I'm 55 years old. I'm not going to get in a pissing contest now, but just as I face to say that he didn't like me and we didn't get along, and I don't think I definitely don't think my best interests were at his heart. You know what I mean? But and also they were grooming me to be, because I was also writing a second run TV, the All American and Mania shows, and they were grooming me to be on the book, grooming me to be on the booking committee, which was Pat and Bruce. There's no booking committee like there is, now. There was no writers. It was just, Pat and Bruce. Same with every company. It was just a booker, and they were grooming me to work with Pat and Bruce, and I'm sure they didn't like that, and they didn't like me, so it just compounded things. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever. I haven't talked to Bruce in a long time. I mean, I don't hold any grudges, so I don't care. And so I don't, and I heard he said some nice things about me, so I'm not gonna just rag on him for no reason. You know what I mean?
And we've heard some stories about this Lisa Wolf from Al Snow and JJ Dillon. I guess she worked at the office around that time. Did you have any experiences with her?
Yeah, she was in charge of human resources, and her I was her pet project. Like, they told her to turn me into a mensch, basically, because I'd show up in like Raven. I would show up in Raven clothes, and they said, no, we got to have you in a suit and tie. You got to be corporate, So they had me start wearing a suit and tie, and she was in charge of getting me to be more corporate, as opposed to who I am, which is not corporate.
What was Shane's job in those days behind the scenes?
I don't remember. I forget. But the funny thing is I used to get so much heat, like all the boys thought I was, because me and Shane hung out, that I was sucking up to the boss's son. But in actuality, I was burying myself, because Shane would always go out. I'd always bring him out with me, and we'd go out till 5 a.m, and then he'd call his dad, and he'd and because on TV, like, I always loved this comedy bit where you call the guy by the wrong name. So I would call Vince Vic on TV. I'd go, hey, Vic. And he goes, Vince. And I'm like, oh, sorry, Vic. And then so Shane started calling his dad Vic, which did not help my career any. And then Shane goes, and then Shane would be like at 5 a.m, he's like, hey, Dad. Hey, he goes, hey, Vic, I'm staying at Johnny Polo's tonight, which was just burying me. I'm like, oh, you're killing me. Don't call your dad Vic when you're hanging out with me, you know. And he just thought it was funny, but but also they didn't like their son being out till 5 a.m, hanging out with me, who was drunk all every night, So it buried me. It didn't have the would be it did not help my career one iota, and probably negatively impacted hugely. Even though I got heat from the boys for being, for exact opposite.
We always hear that it's likely going to be Triple H possibly taking over from Vince if he ever passes or steps down. Do you think Shane would have been the better person because he seems more cool, for lack of another word, than Triple H and Stephanie? They don't seem to be doing anything too great right now with Triple H running NXT creative.
Well, it's funny. Shane was always groomed for it. Shane always was like, back then he used to be like, me and you are going to be the Pat and Bruce of the '90s. And I was like, yeah, I'm like, oh, that'd be great. But I think, I don't know. I mean, I haven't talked to Shane in years. But I know Hunter knows wrestling. I mean, let's face it, Hunter knows the business really, really well. Um, Do I watch the show? No. But do I keep up with it? Yeah, I keep up with it to an extent. So I got an idea what goes on. I don't necessarily agree with all the stuff they do, but yeah, no, I mean, I think that of what the because I don't know, I don't know those guys in 10 years, you know what I mean? Or no, 20 years. I don't really know. I haven't seen those guys in 20 years. So, but 20 years ago, I would say Hunter was much more qualified because he understands wrestling at a really deep level. And you really have to be a good booker. But and I don't really know how Shane would be. So I mean, it's you'd think it'd be easy for me to pick, but I really don't know. I don't know them. I mean, I haven't seen them in 20 years.
Is there anything that you're particularly proud of producing during those days working in the office?
Um, the I came up with an idea mainly because I wanted to watch old wrestling tapes. Where I came up with this flashback segment for one of the shows I was writing, the All American, and so which meant that I had to go find old matches to show. But you couldn't show matches that had WCW talent. You couldn't show matches that had guys who were on persona non grata. You couldn't show matches with. So it's really hard to find matches, but I didn't care because I just got to watch through tapes. So I mean, I remember sitting in the studio watching Dusty Rhodes versus superstar Billy Graham from Madison Square Garden, and stuff like that. It was really cool to watch those matches. So I'm proud I got that on the air. But I mean, it was tough though to find, stuff that had guys that you could put on there that you could air. And then also a lot of also matches back then were mostly squash matches. So the only stuff you could really find was the Madison Square Garden stuff. But back then, guys worked the crowd way more than they work the crowd now. Like to the point where if you watched it now, you'd be like, "Oh my God, this is taking forever." But the crowds were so lively that especially the main events I was watching, like it was very hard to find matches you could put on the air. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, speaking of superstar Billy Graham, I mean, he's described it as pandemonium when he walked out as champion, and you can see the crowd going wild. Do you ever think there'll be pandemonium like that again for wrestling crowds?
Only if they give out free pandas.
And how was working with Gorilla Monsoon? You did some announcing with him.
Yeah, I love doing that. Gorilla was such a great guy. He was such a nice guy too. Just a nice gentleman. Just a really, really smart guy.
Now, I actually liked the Johnny Polo character when I was a kid. I didn't understand that you were the same guy from WCW. I remember seeing you. I'm from Ottawa. I saw you wrestle Owen Hart once on a house show here in Ottawa, and I couldn't understand why you were wrestling because I thought you were just a manager. But how did they present the Johnny Polo idea to you when you came in?
They said you're gonna be this rich kid from Connecticut, this upper crust rich kid, which I'm thinking immediately like my voice pattern does not sound like an upper crust rich kid. I sound like a thug, um, or a bum. Um, and they said, and you're gonna manage Adam Bomb because he was new and they wanted a contrast, but I never saw it. I mean, but and you know, they never. And to be honest, eventually that's why Vince stopped me managing, because he's like, it's like there's a disconnect. He goes, when I see you, I don't really see a Johnny Polo like this upper crust rich kid. I go, I know, I never saw it, but I wasn't going to tell you that when you're hiring me, you know, when you're first hiring me, because I needed the job, you know. But
You
yeah,
were funny though as that character. The
well, you
best
know,
part was how funny you were.
well, people think that I hated that character, and it's not that I hated it. I loved what I did. I just didn't like being the character. But the work I did, I'm very proud of the work I did. Like, you know, like the one time I came out with the flippers on and a snorkel and a mask, like, you know, like a man of leisure. That's the whole concept was. I tried to make him more a man of leisure. You know, he has all this money, so he, you know, he gets to. And I came out with a blue drink in a giant mug and a lawn chair, and I actually taped a umbrella into the drink, to the side of the drink, so I had an umbrella drink. And I was like, you know, I was proud of what I was doing, but it's not what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be, you know. And and I didn't want to manage. I wanted to wrestle, but you know, I figured as long as I'm managing, I'm still, you know, working. But if I become just a full time producer, now I'm not even working at all, and that didn't work for me.
Was it common for them to do that, to throw you into house show matches like the one I saw with kind of no explanation as to why you're suddenly a wrestler?
Yeah, and I didn't work excessive amounts, but I worked enough. Like one of the things I'm proudest of is I got the people to chant a Virgil chant when I wrestled Virgil. Like I felt like, you know, the fact that I got them to hate me enough that they would cheer "Go Virgil, go." I was pretty proud of that.
Now, for Adam Baum, have you heard about his recent arrest and all the stuff going on with him?
Not a recent update. Yeah, I heard about it. What, he got arrested for bank robbing or something, or
It was something fairly serious. I don't think it's actually gone to trial yet, but obviously, I guess you don't know that much detail about it. You probably don't stay in contact with him.
no, I don't stay in contact with. I stay in contact with very few people, as a matter of fact. I'm just not a phone person. You know, like I'll text certain people like every 3 4 months, you know, or every month. But I'm like, I'll see them when I see them. You know.
Now, I've interviewed both Quebecers a couple of times. Carl Willette said he liked you, but for some reason, I guess Jacques didn't go into it. But I guess for some reason, you didn't mix that well with Jacques. I guess you didn't ride with them or something.
I rode with Marty Jannetty. The Me and Marty, I known him from my first territory in Memphis, and me and Marty always really got along well. And and plus, I don't think they ever asked. I don't know if they ever even asked. They might have asked me to ride with them. But yeah, me and Pierre get along great. But Jock just never liked me, you know. Or I don't know if he ever. Maybe he did at one point. I don't know. Jock, but but you know, Jock was talented. You know, I got nothing bad to say about him. I mean, he did nothing bad to me. You know, he never. You know, he may not have liked me, but he wasn't. He didn't show it. Like, you know, he didn't. He didn't act like he didn't like me. So to me, it was always friendly. So you know.
They were telling me about some heat they had backstage with the Steiners. Did you notice any of that at that time, or since you didn't really ride with them, were you kind of out of the loop there?
Kind of out of the loop. Plus, I didn't really know they had heat with him. But but I
Jock
used to.
threw an apple at Rick once, and I guess the apple just burst on a pole, and luckily didn't hit Rick in the face. But I guess it almost came to blows that day.
Really,
Yeah,
I didn't even know that happened.
it
The
was on a European tour.
I might not have been. I might not have been on that. I might have been producing. Like that might have left me behind. Yeah, I don't think I went on the European tours, Johnny Polo. I don't think I went on any overseas stuff. Um, but yeah, no, I get along really well with Rick too. Like um, I used to always go like they used to do those face to face promos where you're in like, you know, where there's a curtain between you, but really you're supposed to be separated from different parts of the country. And I would always like Rick would say his promo, and then I'd make fun of him and stick my head around the curtain and make fun of him, and then he'd chase me around the locker room. But thank God he never beat me up though. Like
And
even in play, I wouldn't want to be beat up by Rick.
no, now for Ludwig Borga, strangely, I had a bunch of fans that wanted me to ask you about Ludwig Borga, so there's for some reason interest in your opinion of him.
Um, he supposedly he was a Nazi. He hated Jews and supposedly, but he never treated me poorly. I mean, I guess because I was friends with Nash, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the guy at all. Barely. I've ridden with him, I think, once or twice because I was riding with Kevin. And, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know him well enough. I hate to sound like I'm copping out, but I just don't
Yeah.
know the guy that well. But, and I always go by how people treat me. I mean, that's all you can go by, like, you know,
One of the stories that the Quebecers had told me was that apparently the Steiners popped Borga's tires and tried to blame it on Jacques and Carl, but it all ended up getting settled down. But as you said, you don't know anything about that. Bastian Booger, I heard that you found that he wasn't too nice of a person. Could you elaborate on that?
yeah, Bastian Booger, he, he was funny though. He was fucking funny as hell. But but it was always insult humor, which I like. I like insult humor, But but no, I don't think he liked me either. I don't think he liked me very much. But yeah, no, that's. I mean, I don't know much to say. I didn't hang out with these guys, so I don't have much to say about them.
Now, what about the Undertaker? Did you have much interaction with him?
We hung out just a teeniest bit. We went to a Blackfoot concert once. Me, him, and I was he was in town in Stanford, and I was producing. I was going to see Blackfoot that night, so I said, "You want to go?" He's like, "Yeah." So him and Bruce Pritchard, we all went to see Blackfoot. Um, and then one time I rode with him, and we went to the mystery. What's it? The mystery the Winchester House, the Winchester Mystery House with all
Oh,
the rooms. That was crazy, man. So me, him, and Paul Bearer all went there one day on a day off. Like we either had a day off or before the show. We went to the Winchester Mystery House. That was our big adventure together.
wow. Any memories of that?
No, just that, like it's one of those things where if ever we see each other, like we're like the Mystery Winchester House. Like you have to like. One time I rode with Jim Duggan. Like I only rode with him once in all the years in the business. I rode with him on one loop, and we went to see two movies on two different days. We were in Texas somewhere, and we saw Basketball and Something About Mary. And so whenever we see each other, we always bring that up because it's like a touchstone.
I'm
You know,
shocked that Raven would go to see basketball.
Basketball was hysterical. I thought it was so much better than There's Something About Mary. Like There's Something About Mary got all the hype because she had the cum in her hair,
Yeah.
but Basketball was a way funnier movie. Like those guys are hysterical, South Park guys.
So, how did you put together the whole Raven character and come up with the name and so forth?
The I knew I wanted to still be a chicken shit character, but Paige DDP goes to me. He said, "You need to be more. You need to go. You need to be. You can't be a chicken shit anymore." I'm like, "Why?" He goes, "Because nobody's hiring them. Because nobody. That's not the way the bookers are looking for." I go, "But it's a money drawn character. I can be a money drawn character." He goes, "Yeah, but it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what they think." I'm like, "That's a good point." So he goes, I was watching the Point Break the other day, and I saw and those Red Hot Chili Pepper guys. You remind me of them, because you have tattoos with the long hair and the leather jacket. And he's like, you ought to do something like that. So that was the impetus. So and then from there, I created the whole character, lock, stock, and barrel. Like I created the wardrobe, the promos, the look, everything. But I totally give Paige credit for pointing me in the right direction. And that's also why Raven was so tough, was because he had to be overcome the albatross of Johnny Polo. So I had to become the toughest guy in the business. And I didn't want to be a tough guy. I mean, like, I mean, we're all reasonably tough back in our real world, but in the wrestling world, there's tough guys. I mean, there's levels. And I didn't want to play a tough guy because in the wrestling world, I'm not anywhere on that. I'm in a much lower level than most people. even though I was a U.S. Marine, even though I've been in enough fights and I can handle myself, but I didn't want to just. To me, being a tough guy is kind of blasé, you know. Just being a just tough guy, you know what I mean? Like anybody can do it. There's no art form, so I had to make it. I wanted to make mine an art form. I wanted to make my character 3 dimensional. I wanted to make mine unique. Um, and also, I knew, which everybody should know, but they don't, is that selling, if you get beat up, if you're getting beat up and you take everybody's finishes and you keep getting up, you're the toughest guy in the room, not the guy who does the beating up. Everybody thinks it's the guy who beats people up is the toughest guy. No, the toughest guy is the guy that takes the beating and then gets up and says, "What up, motherfucker?" And so that's why I took Raven, because I wanted to make him a more interesting tough guy, um, where it wasn't about being so tough. He just happened to enjoy pain and to be able to take a beating. And plus, I love selling. Like, to me, selling is the most entertaining part of wrestling. To me, there's nothing more entertaining than watching a guy sell, trying to stand up, and you're like, is he going to stand up? Is he going to be able to get up and fight back? Is he going to be able? Is he going to fall over? You know, the drama. And so I sell well. I sell really well. It's what I do best. So I knew that I wanted to do that, and I knew I wanted to. I knew I was going to do something alternative because it fit my look. Because I always wore Doc Martens anyway. I wore leather jackets, um, ripped up jeans, you know. So I started thinking, what do I do? Okay, how do I make this character? I go, all right, I need a, I need a look. So I go, I've told this story a bunch of times before, but I'll tell it again. So I go, I need some shorts. I don't want to wear wrestling gear because that's not, it's going to it's not going to define the character the way he needs to be defined. So I'm going to wear, so first I got some baggy ass gym short types, you know. I'm like, nah, I need jean shorts, ripped up jean shorts. So I pulled a pair out of my closet. I'm like, all right, that's perfect. So then I go, now I need some flannel, you know, because grunge was big then. So I'm like, oh, I'll go get some flannel. So I got a flannel, put on a flannel shirt, cut off the sleeves. But I look like Big Josh then. Remember Matt Bourne's
Yeah.
character? So I was like, that's not it. So I found another flannel shirt that I had, and I tied it around my waist because I'd already cut the sleeves off the other one. And so I got another flannel shirt. So I tied it around my waist. I'm like, all right, that works. Um, then I said, I go, I'll wear my Doc Martens. I'll have a wrestling sole put on it. Take, you know, for my Doc Martens. So then I got them. And then I need a jacket. Do I wear a jean jacket? No. Leather jacket? Yeah, I'm going to just wear my leather jacket. And then I realized that, like, I've always been a big fan of ring jackets. Like, because to me, to be a star, you got to look like a star. And so you want to have a lot of ring jackets. Like, I always use Terry Taylor as an example. Like, Ric Flair had like so many robes that were beautiful, so he looked like $1,000,000. Terry Taylor had one robe that was beautiful. It looked like a Ric Flair robe. You know, it was as good as that or better, except he only had one. So when he wore it, wow, it's really cool. And he wears it again and again, and all of a sudden you're like, that's the same jacket. It doesn't. It You lose luster. You know what I mean? It's a brilliant jacket though, and it's expensive, so I don't blame him. You know, but I think you have to spend money to make money. So like when I was in Portland, I had 12 ring jackets, and I only been in the business a year and a half at that point. You know, because I knew that's important to look like a star, and I'd make them on the cheap. I would I'd go to TJ Maxx and buy like a leather jacket or a jean jacket for $20 back in Portland, and then I'd find I could put some fringe on it or a patch on the back with a something cool, or I'd put like neon pads, you know, patches on it. And I'd buy the really weird looking jean jackets too, so they would look unique on their own. And so I had like 12 ring jackets, and none of them cost me more than $50 to make, you know. So but then I knew I couldn't wear any of that now. So wearing a leather jacket. So I'm like, if I just wear the little one leather jacket, it's not going to have as much star power. But he wouldn't wear anything else. So what else would he wear? He'd wear a concert shirt. That's what he. So I got concert shirts, and then I cut the sleeves off because I had big arms. I have a thick waist, so it hid my thick waist and hid my lack of chest. So it hid my weaknesses and accentuated my strengths. So I was like, all right, I got the outfit. And in the same 5 to 8 minutes that this happened, I go, I need a name. Need a name. But let's see. Who would I use as a reference point? The Crow. What was his name? Eric Draven, Raven. Quote the Raven, nevermore. Boom. Now I had the whole thing. Now I just had to work on the promos. So I write some promos. I call up Paige. I'm like, how's that? He's like, no, that's not it. And I call him back. How about this? And then eventually I got the gist of it, but I still didn't see where I was going with it yet. Like, so, so then, I got the job. Paulie hires me, and so he thought I was going to do like a rock and roll grunge version of what I'd been doing, like a comedy character. But when he saw what I was doing, he really got vibed with it, and he really kind of understood. Like subconsciously, I was headed somewhere, like to mining my neuroses and my dark past, and mining that for material. And he saw I was going that way before I did. Like in the first month or two, he understood my character better than I did. You know, I didn't understand what I was coming up with at first because I was blocking it. You know what I mean? Like I was hiding from what I was trying to accomplish mentally to, because I was minding my own shit for it. And then eventually I figured out what I was doing, and then I really got a handle on it. And then I just did the best work. The best work I've ever done in my career has been with Paulie. We worked so well together, even though I drove him nuts.
How was the pay working there?
What you expect.
Okay. Now everyone remembers those chair shots at Heatwave from Dreamer. Did you guys put that little segment together?
Which one?
When you took those chair shots, I think it was Heatwave 95.
The one chair shot heard around the world in the opening. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, okay. So I chaired him numerous times. So him and Paulie wanted to hit me like 10 times a piece. I didn't know that was Heatwave 95. I didn't know what it was. And so Paulie's like, we got to hit you 10 times. I'm like, no, you don't. And Dreamer's like, no, I got to get my revenge. I'm like, no, you hit me once, it stands out. I'll sell it like I've been shot. I go, but if you hit me 10 times, they're not going to mean anything. He goes, but everybody else in the card is taking 3-4 chair shots. I'm like, they can take 3-4. It doesn't matter what they do. My match, what happens in mine, it doesn't matter. As Piper smarted me up this a long time ago, it doesn't matter what anybody else does in their match. You want to convince them that yours is real. And that's great advice. Like, doesn't matter if every other match is fake, to the fans. But if your match looks real, the people go, I saw that match. That was real. You know what I mean? Or that's the closest you can come to. It doesn't matter. Like if the guy right before you takes 37 chair shots, right? And then you go out there, if you take one and sell it, who's going to get over more, and B, are they going to go, they're just going to say the 37 chair shots were phony. They're not going to think the one chair shot, So I took the one. So then I finally convinced Dreamer, and Dreamer was amazing. Like if I had an idea and I was set on it, he would always go, all right, I'm buying it. I'm trusting you. I'll totally go your way. And I go, but when I was wrong, though, I'd always admit I was wrong. Like if afterwards I was wrong, I'd go, okay, I was wrong. Sorry about that. And he knew I would admit it, so he had no problem. So Paulie, we had to convince Paulie for me to just take the one chair shot. And then it became, legendary, supposedly, in the open, got fit in the opening, amazingly. I can ever get, there's two compliments that people that I think are the best that people can ever give me. And one is that they got into the business because of me. That's the greatest compliment. And then the other is when people say, when friends of workers go, is Raven really an asshole? And that to me is the greatest compliment, because that means they believe they believe the shit I was doing out there to some extent, because they believe I'm an asshole. Now whether I was an asshole or not, that's debatable. Well, not very debatable. I was an asshole, but that's beside the point. But the fact that they thought that, that to me means I'm doing my job. And so, not that I expected people to believe that me and Dreamer's feud was real, but I wanted them to believe that the animosity was real. I wanted them to believe that, that I was really this big a prick, this selfish, childish, tortured, poetic soul. And that me and Dreamer, they have to be able to suspend disbelief in the moment. Like, yeah. So it's not that people think it's real, but it's that, and then while they're watching it, they go, "Wow, this is like they're not busy going, let's go so and so, let's go so and so," because that's more of an athletic contest. That's not a fight. I wanted them to go, kill Raven, or go Tommy. And even that breaking down, I wanted them to yell kill Raven more than I wanted them to yell go Tommy. Like, because if they're yelling fuck you, Raven, that means they hate me more than they love him. And if they're yelling go Tommy, that means they love him more than they hate me. And so I would never do anything to try and, I would never do anything to try and to get over on an opponent in any way that I didn't tell them ahead of time. I mean, I would never try and make myself, take liberties, or, or, make, do stuff to make him look lesser. I would never do that, because to me, it's a dance. It's a partnership. But by the same token, I wanted people to yell, fuck you, Raven, not go Tommy. But either one was still better. It was still what I wanted, because that means that they're emotionally invested, which is the key. When they're yelling, let's go so and so, let's go the other guy, they're emotionally invested, and that's great to hear. But it's not as great as go so and so and fuck you so and so, because that means they're emotionally invested so deeply. Whereas the other way, they're excited, they're loving the match, but they realize it's just a match. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And a couple of fans wanted me to ask you about the Sandman overdose story.
Yeah, so it's the first time Rhino rode with us. So Rhino's driving. I'm in the passenger seat in the front. In the back is Sandman and Fonzie, and little Guido's back there. And so I was shooting up OxyContin at the time. Not proud of it, but it is what it is. And that's why I like on my podcast. Whenever I tell stories about my past, I always include. I mean, even if I don't, I always include a number for addiction hotline and an addiction and recovery.org, where you can get find information, because I still believe that I so wish I wouldn't have done the amount and quantity that I did, but I did. There's nothing I can do about it, and I did have some great times. I also had some horrible times, and so I always try to point out the negative with the positive, because otherwise it just it just glorifies the positive, and people don't realize like my heroes were drug addicts, which is stupid, really stupid, and I don't want people to feel the same way about me, going, yeah, Raven got fucked up, I'm gonna get fucked up, unless they know that getting fucked up means paying a price, and a big price. But yeah, anyway, so we're driving, and I was shooting up OxyContin. So we go in the bathroom, and Sandman's like, he's like at a gas station bathroom, and he's like, let me try something. I go, all right, but don't do that. You can't do that big a dose. You haven't, your system isn't adapted to it, because you haven't done, whatever. You build up to a tolerance, and your tolerance is way lower. So he's like, no, I'm fine. I can do it. So he does it. Next thing I know, we're driving down the highway, and Fonzie goes, "Bend it up, Daddy. Sandman's lips are turning blue." We're like, holy shit. I'm like, fucking call 911. So we call 911, and they go, where are you at? We're in the highway. They go, meet us at mile marker so and so. We'll be at the gas station off the exit. So we go hauling ass, and we're like, what do we do with all the baggage? We got drugs in there. Well, we don't want to get arrested. Well, we got to make sure we save Sandman's life. So we get off the exit. We race to the exit, got off. There was a hotel right across the street from the gas station. So we jump out at the hotel. We throw all the luggage out. Little Guido's in the way back. He goes flying, body surfing over the luggage, and takes a face plant on the fucking cement. We get all the bags out of the car, and then we leave Guido with him. And then we drive over across the street to the gas station. 911's there. The paramedics are there. And Sandman always likes to say that they had to stick a needle in his heart to restart it, but that didn't actually happen, though. But they had to give him some Narcan, I guess, and they got his heart restarted. And his wife was so pissed at me. Oh, I'm like, it's not my fault. I can't control him. I go, but yeah, Sandman almost died. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Did
and
you still make the...
Yeah, we still made the show. No, this was after the show, I think. This is after the show. And Rhino, this is his first time riding with us ever. And he's new to the company, too. So he's like, what the fuck have I gotten myself into?
He's a pretty straight guy, I guess.
Yeah, no, Rhino's a really good guy. Yeah.
And as far as Mike Awesome, what's your opinion on him?
I think that he was a really good guy. I mean, I didn't know him that well. I think we were in the tag belts one time or something, but we never really hung out. Other than I always thought it was his idea to wear a mullet. I was like, so one day I asked him, I go, "Why are you wearing a mullet?" He goes, "That's how they told me. That's how I forget if it was Paulie or Cornette, one of the two, told him to cut his hair that way." I'm like, why? He's like, I don't know. I didn't want to do it. I'm like, okay, good. That made me feel better about the guy.
And you had a fan question that wanted to know if it's true you brought Kimona into ECW, and did you ever date her?
Yes, I brought her in, but no, I didn't date her. She was a buddy of mine's girlfriend. Like I was DJing at a strip club one night a week because I had no clubs to go out to. Because I used to go out 7 nights a week, and I'd be on the road for 2, and I'd go out after the show in the ECW. And so Monday nights there was nowhere to go, so I figured I might as well get paid to to hang out at a club. So I started DJing, and my buddy was a DJ, and Kimona was a dancer there, and I was his girlfriend. And so I needed a new valet. So I'm like, hey, she'd be perfect, Oriental, or Asian. I thought she'd be a cool look to have. And so I didn't even hit on her because it was my buddy's girlfriend. But yeah, she dated a bunch of the boys. She's a real sweetheart though. But yeah, she's a really nice person.
And another valet that dated a bunch of the boys was Sunny. She's in the news again this week. I'm sure you probably heard. What's your opinion of her and all of her issues?
Uh what's the latest news? I didn't hear.
She was arrested. I think we're Wednesday today. She was arrested on Monday with 3 charges related to driving, and I think violating her parole and something else.
Yeah, I feel bad for her. I mean, I've always gotten along really, really well with her, and yeah, I feel bad for her. I feel bad that she hasn't hit either rock bottom yet to get clean, or I don't know. I mean, you never want someone to hit rock bottom, but sometimes they have to hit rock bottom, to get clean. And the only way it ends up is you end up dead, jail, or you end up dead, clean, or in prison. So hopefully she ends up clean and not dead or in prison.
It probably doesn't look good for her since she just came out of jail for a year and was on probation to be arrested again, unfortunately.
Then prison is probably where it's going to end up, unfortunately.
And you had a match against Terry Gordy in ECW. How was that experience?
That was one of my proudest matches ever. Because Gordy had suffered an aneurysm or something, or brain damage because he had an overdose, and he just couldn't work the same as he did before because his brain didn't work as effectively anymore, and so he wasn't the same Terry Gordy. And I put together a match that I knew he could follow. That I made it organic. So like if after this happens, the thing where it leads to is this next spot, which leads to this next thing. That's what I try to do in all my matches. Like I didn't want them to look choreographed at all, but they were tightly choreographed. A lot of it. I just made it look like it wasn't. But it's a simple thing. Like if you hit a guy and knock him down, and then let's say the next spot is you're going to shoot him off the ropes. The guy can most times the guy just lays there in the center. You got to pick him up and you got to push him to the ropes or punch him to the ropes and then shoot him off. What I would do is if that was me is I would tell the guy when you go down, start crawling to the ropes already. When you stand up from at the ropes and turn around, I'll be right there to shoot you off. It's very choreographed, but it doesn't look it because it looks like he's trying to get away, and all of a sudden, oh, there I am to shoot him off. You know what I mean? And it
Yeah.
doesn't waste all that time with me picking him up and then punching him in the face 18,000 times just to get him to the ropes. Um, and so I set up a match, that I thought he could follow perfectly, and he did. And it was, man, and that was probably the me and Sandman always argue over who had the biggest pop in company history, whether it was my return from WCW or his return. But really, the biggest pop was Terry Gordy.
And
But I
of
was still
course,
in that. I was still in that match though, so I get that pop. I get half the credit.
True, and I guess he didn't last probably very long there because of those the brain aneurysm stuff.
Yeah, not. I don't know if it was an aneurysm. I don't think it was an aneurysm. It was I don't know what it was, but the Paulie tried to use him as long as he could because Paulie had so much respect for him, for what he was.
And you've talked about this to death, but a lot of fans still want me to ask you about the crucifixion incident.
Yeah, I mean, there's not much to say at this point other than you know I got out of rehab and I wanted to make a dynamic impact. So I was like, yeah, why don't I crucify Sandman? So because Raven always said that he was a martyr for society's dysfunction, and I wanted Sandman to feel my pain. So I made him build his own cross because I don't have any carpentry skills, so he built his own cross, and then we set it up and it worked. It worked perfectly, but the only problem was Kurt Angle was there because Paulie was trying to hire him, and Kurt Angle had never seen pro wrestling, and all of a sudden he's like, "What the fuck is this?" The guy's getting crucified, on a cross, and so he wigged out, and then Taz wigged out, and then they started going, "Well, it's because you're Jewish, and Paulie's Jewish, and Todd Gordon's Jewish. That's why you can do this." I'm like, "No." They go, "Why don't you make a Jewish star?" I'm like, "If I made a Jewish star, he'd roll away." You know, I was like, yeah, it wasn't the wrong heat. It was the right kind of heat. People were like, "Oh fuck," like in a good way. But he made me go out and apologize, and I gave the most sincere apology ever. And but it and then I don't know. I thought it was really good stuff. Because like I was using, and it had nothing to do with religion. I was using it because the iconography of the cross, um, and Raven's whole martyr for society's dysfunction, and it just it led itself to being a great work of art. I thought, as Raven's artwork. Um, but that's not what happened. That's not what the if Kurt wouldn't have been there, I think it would have just nobody would have cared. Plus, here's the thing: we're the rebel promotion. If you're the rebel of promotion, you don't apologize. Even if you cross the line, you try not to cross the line. But even if you do, you don't apologize for it because you're the rebels. Rebels don't apologize. Even
Yeah.
when they cross the line. And so I thought it was a bad deal all the way around. But yeah, it happens. But yeah, you could still have another promotion, an ECW kind of promotion, um, except you'd have to have somebody who had a connection to get it on TV. Because without TV, you going nowhere fast.
Yeah. Now you ended up getting recruited back to WCW at that point in time. I think they may have been, if not ahead of WWE, getting there. How did that process work when you jumped to them? I'm sure WWE may have offered you something at that time too.
Well, when I was in ECW, WWE didn't offer me anything. WCW did, and and plus I didn't want to go back to WWE because I they would have I don't think they would have used me the way I wanted to be used, and so when I got to WCW, they used me really well at first, but then I just felt like it was my time to move up the card, and they didn't. There was 10 guys, 10 at least 10 guys ahead of me, that had been on top for years that weren't stepping down. So what are you gonna do?
And I think you were one of the most iconic characters from that Nitro era.
Thank you.
Did did you have much creative pull when they brought you in?
Yeah, they surprisingly Eric let me. He said you're the only person besides Hogan that I let have creative control over his stuff. Not full control, mind you, but let you come up with your own storylines. And then he had when Dusty came back, he had Dusty work with me in Saturn, so we could keep coming up with our own stuff. But I tried to be really smart about it. Like I tried to do angles only with guys on my own level or lower, because I knew if I asked for top guys that they either wouldn't let me do it, or I would end up doing a job at the end, and come out the loser, not the I'd come out the loser of the storyline, not the angle. Not at the end of the match. I'm at the end of the series. I'm always going to lose because I'm the heel. But I didn't want to think I'd be able to come out as strong in the storyline unless I was working with somebody I knew, like DDP. So I tried to keep my angles with like Canyon, DDP, the Flock, guys that were, that they wouldn't have a problem with me shining the way I needed to shine, so I tried to be smart about it like that. Um, but I like the idea of me sitting in the stands. That was Terry Taylor's idea. That was a brilliant idea. And
Yeah.
I think that was also his idea to have me pass out instead of tapping to Benoit.
Now, is it true that the flock would often get fucked up in the stands?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We were drinking. We were getting drunk. One time we tried to call our ecstasy dealer, but he couldn't show up in time.
Was alcohol pretty much accepted backstage in WCW? We've heard the stories of Hogan having the garbage can full of beer backstage.
I don't know. Hogan's locker room was a whole, that was a separate locker room for Hogan and his buddies. You know, no, I don't think people had beer backstage, but everybody was pilled up though.
How much control did you have over the members of the flock?
I didn't have enough because if it was up to me, they would have got wins. Like they used to, like Kidman would always complain. He goes, "How come you can't get us any wins?" I'm like, I try, and I go to Sullivan. I go, "Come on, give these guys some wins." And Sullivan would go, some have to die so that others may live." I'm like, yeah, but can't they? Do they have to be the ones that die every time? And and I didn't realize like Sullivan at the time was like, it was like he would do stuff like he would say to try and get me to come up with something on my okay, like I come up with an idea, and so I find out, I get to the show, and they'd say and they'd call me in to give me the finish, and they'd say, "We need you to put over so and so," and I go, "That's a great idea, but because I'm doing this and this, wouldn't it be better if I went over and like that?" And so because of that, I didn't do a lot of jobs. Not that I was, and it's not that like they had a problem with it, because it was just asking logically. Like if I would have left and came, like Ken used to say, "How do you get away with that?" And I'm like, well, first of all, you can't leave and come back, because they'll just go, "Oh, we already sent it to the truck. Oh, we can't change it." I go, you have to come up with the idea on the spot, and you have to have a good fucking reason, a better reason than what they have. Otherwise, why would they change it? So I would always have to have a better reason. And then I didn't realize, but the Sullivan, like it became like a challenge. Like, and so me and him would, it was like a friendly competition to come up with ways of not me to not lose, and him to get me to lose.
Now, as far as Van Hammer, he was a guy that seemingly had a WCW contract for years and years and years, never really went anywhere. What was your opinion of him? I know he's had his serious brushes with the law lately.
Yeah, I like Hammer, but I didn't want him in the flock. I didn't want almost none of those guys that I want, other than Saturn and Sick Boy, because I wanted all new guys. Like I felt like if you give me retreads, people know they're retreads. Like Riggs, at least we did something to make him into into a character with us. But like, and Kidman was fairly new, so that was cool too. But when they started giving me, and Horace was Hulk's nephew, so that was definitely going to be put a. Jimmy Hart goes, "Hey, can you do Hulk a favor? Put a horse in the flock?" I'm like, I don't have any say in it, but absolutely. If Hulk wants it, that's fine with me. But like Hammer and Reese, no offense, like I like both of them, and I was glad for friendly purpose, social purposes, that they were in the flock. But I didn't want to pick them because they would just look like guys who were just getting a new act. You know what I mean? Like it was just, oh, that's a guy. Let's put him in that act because we have nothing for him. Whereas a guy like Hammer, I would have taken him off TV for a year and revamped him on his own. You know what I mean? Or find a way to repackage him. But you can't. I hated when they would just take a guy one week who was so and so, and the next week they'd repackage him and he'd be so and so without being off. A different guy without being off TV for a while.
John Tenta, I think, was the worst for that, and maybe Brutus Beefcake too in WCW.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, as far as Perry Saturn, have you heard anything about him lately? He seems to have dropped off the face of the earth.
Yeah, I don't know what's happened to him lately. Like, we were in touch for a while when he surfaced, but when things aren't going well, he tends to disappear. and he doesn't want to be a burden to anybody, which is a shame because he's such a great guy and everybody loves him. But yeah, I gotta. In fact, the other day, my ex-wife's my best friend. Like we're closer now than when we were married, if that's even possible. And she was even saying, she's like, you got to call us. Yeah, she goes like, when's the last time you called Saturday? And I go like a month ago. She's like, did you hear? And I go, but he didn't return my call. Like he doesn't. He's really bad about returning calls when he's not doing well. She's like, you need to check up on him again. She's right. So I gotta give him a call again, at least a couple calls.
And I guess Steven Richard said in a shoot interview, I don't know if you've heard about this, that he felt you took advantage of him in WCW. Did you ever see that clip?
WCW?
Apparently, according to this fan question, he said this in an RF video shoot interview.
I took advantage of in WCW.
Yeah.
He was only there for a couple of weeks, and then he quit.
I hardly even remember him from WCW. So yeah, I didn't see the clip myself. That was just a fan question. So there's the answer. You didn't hear anything about it. Now you had a match against Goldberg where he beat you for the U.S. Championship. Any thoughts on him? And I guess he was probably the biggest star WCW created from scratch.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a star. He had got a lot of bad advice. Like I've seen him since, in the last couple of years, not the last couple of years, but probably in the last 5-10 years. And he was very thankful to me for helping him with to have such a good match. And he was very apologetic about not listening more to me, about like trying to get him to sell some and stuff like that. And he's like, I just had a lot of the wrong people in my ear, and I'm like, yeah, it's totally understandable. But but no, I like Bill. I've known Bill for years. He's a really good guy. Um, and I'm really proud of that match too, because considering his ability to work, I think I got one of the three best matches out of him ever.
Are you impressed with the longevity he's had recently? I think he was still champion this year. Not too long ago, he held the WWE title.
He's smart. Like he got away and he became valuable again. And people like, look, people want to love the guy. He looks like a machine. Nikita Koloff was probably the first person to do that character. When Nikita was a babyface, same character, the jacked up like maniac, machine who looks like he could kill anybody. Um, and yeah, no, I'm happy for Bill. I'm real happy for him.
A couple of fans had this question. I don't recall it because it was obviously over 20 years ago now, but I guess you had a famous stare down with the Macho Man in WCW that I guess some fans felt there was more to it than just an angle.
Yeah, the only reason I even remember it is because I've seen pictures on Twitter of me and him staring off, and I think they just did it. I don't even remember exactly why or anything other than I think it was just a tease. I don't know. I don't think we ever had any contact. I don't think.
I guess you didn't hang out with him much backstage or anything. He seemed to be someone that would do his own thing.
Yeah, the really top guys all hung together, and then the Mexican guys hung together. Me and Saturn and a group of guys would all hang together. It breaks down into cliques, into factions. Just you
And
get
an-
along with people you get along with, and it's always easier to get. It's also you. It's not so much a hierarchy, although it is, but you tend to hang out with the people you're working with. So if you're working on top, you're hanging out with the top guys. If you're working in the middle, you're hanging out with the middle guys.
I see. What did you think about his early passing?
Macho Man's.
Yeah.
I feel. I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. So many people pass young in this business.
I'm going to guess the Ultimate Warrior was similar to Macho Man. You didn't have much contact with him when he was back there.
No, not much at all.
And of course, everyone remembers the fan attacking you. That's another Twitter clip I think it's more infamous now than when it happened. What was going through your head during that?
Well, the whole crazy thing is every time I sit in the corner, I never let anybody attack me before the match because I'm not, because I was saving that. I knew one day I would, but you have to let it sit, just, you can't just do it for any old, I wanted to save it for a big angle. And so me and Canyon were feuding, and I go, and the exact same day, me and Canyon started talking about, I was like, you know what, why don't you attack me while I'm sitting in the corner? And then you come out of the crowd and attack me while I'm sitting in the corner. It'd be cool as shit. And he's like, all right, I go, let's try and get a pass for next week. So then I'm sitting in the corner that night. All of a sudden, I feel someone pulling on my hair, and it's so weird because it's like within 1 second, less than a second, I'm already going with it and going out to the floor. But in that half a second, like you're an athlete, you're a worker. You've had time slow down, haven't you? Where you're in
Yeah.
the zone,
Well, and also in attack situations, when I've been
right?
a bouncer and stuff, I understand that.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden time slows down, and in this half a second, like there was like a 30-second conversation in my head. I'm like, is it Canyon? No, it can't be Canyon. Why would he do it this week? But why would a fan attack me? I can't see a fan attacking me, and security would pull him off. Oh man, what do I do? Do I go with it or do I fight it and let him rip my hair out? Nah, it's got to be Canyon. I mean, all that in like half a second, all that went through my brain. It's like time had slowed down. And after watching it back, because I just did some podcast about it, I was like, holy shit, that was quick. I thought it was much longer because I had all that memory of it. But yeah, so then I just went with it, and then I landed on, took a bump, got up, and then as soon as I saw it was some guy, some skinny 80-pound guy, I was like, motherfucker. And but I couldn't even hit him because the security had him already. So I was like, if I hit him, I'll get sued. So I said, what do I do? Well, I go back in the ring and cut my promo, act like nothing happened. And then the mic didn't work, but I thought it was still going out to the home, even though it wasn't working. So I kept cutting it because even though it wasn't working in the house, I figured it was working at home, but apparently it wasn't working at home either, at least until
Okay.
then they got it fixed. But yeah, but what it made the interesting thing to me is how long I felt like how much time I had in my head to think about what to do, what was going on, you know, and yet it was that. It's crazy how time slows down.
What was the reaction of everyone in the back when you got backstage after that?
I don't know. I don't remember. Let me think. I haven't thought about that. I guess they were like as what the fuck as I was, and then some people were laughing because the guy was like 90 pounds, Yeah, I'm sure I remember I think Conan laughing, going, Um, but yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. And then me and Canyon were just like, man, I go, Canyon, I thought it was you. He's like, what? He's like, we weren't going to do it till next week. I go, I know, but I figured it had to be you. Like, what are the odds that the same day I finally decide to have somebody do it is the same day somebody pulls me out of attacks me,
Yeah.
And, and it was also like, as much as the boys tease me about it, I'm like, hey, that's just heat, baby. That's because I got so much heat.
What do you think today? I mean, some wrestlers, I've heard Sami Zayn recently got a fan kicked out of a WWE event for saying something offensive, whereas back in the older days, even before your time, fan attacks were rare, but like you'd get attacked by a fan and it was just part of the job. But now it seems even like an insult from a fan will hurt a wrestler's feelings.
That's ridiculous. Unless the guy said something like "I'm going to kill your mom" or something, But I don't know what was said. It had to be pretty bad if Sammy got him thrown out. I'd imagine.
Apparently, he called him a faggot or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's poor choice of language, but you're not going to. I wouldn't throw somebody out for that. But I can tell you something that's really funny. When I was working in Memphis, my first territory, they didn't have guardrails. They had stanchions with a rope connecting each stanchion, and so I was wrestling this guy singing this cowboy Don Bass, and Don Bass was a hell of a worker. Not Ron Bass, but Don Bass, shorter, stockier guy, hilarious guy, and so he's choking me with the rope, and then because I was a baby face, and some big fat lady tries to help, and she's like, "You leave him alone," and grabs him. But now she's putting pressure on him, and now he's really choking me. And he's trying not to, but she's grabbing him, and it's forcing him to choke me even harder. And she almost killed me.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, what was the straw that broke the camel's back for you to leave WCW?
Um, I wasn't happy with the way I was being used at that point. I felt like it was my time, and I was also, self-destructive, which I didn't realize. And I had demons and issues, which I did know about, but the I just felt like it was my turn and I wasn't getting. And then Eric said, there's a door. I'm like, all right, there's a door. I'll take it. I figured I'd go to WWE at that point, but then Eric said, I'm not letting you go to WWE. And I go, well, you just told me there's the door. So I mean, he's like, well, you can't go there. And then we talked some more that night. And then he laid out an idea that he had for me. And I was about to come back and say, I'll stay. But then when I found out that the extent of it, I was like, this isn't going to raise me any. It's going to leave me in a same or lower level, even though it was a good idea though. It was a really good idea. Um, but but anyway, so I quit and then I went to ECW and then became a really big addict. My addiction got really bad, but then it also led me to getting clean. So it all worked out for a reason.
And you mentioned earlier the pop you got when you came back to ECW, probably the biggest pop in ECW history. Was that your idea to return that way?
I know. I'm sure that was Paulie's idea because I knew that I wasn't going to wait for the 90-day clause because I knew they didn't have a case. Even though everybody and so everybody always waits the 90 days because it's easier than getting heat. But not me. I have to get heat wherever I go. So I was like, no, I'm not waiting. And so it fit perfectly into Paulie's storyline because the Dudleys were leaving that day, and so it worked out perfect. But the reason it was so surprising was because nobody expected me for at least 90 days.
Why do you think that the show on TNN that ECW had wasn't successful?
I think a lot of it had to do with Paulie being burnt out. And he didn't have the same quality of talent that he had before. The same characters, and he'd been booking the same people for parts of the same people for like 6 years now. That's why bookers back in the day would change every year. Every 6 months to a year they would swap up bookers because you can only be creative with the same talent for so long. Um, and and so so I think part of it was that. Part of it was I don't think the network pushed us like they should have. Um, and I don't know. It always. I really thought they were going to go somewhere. I was really surprised they didn't. Maybe there was just so much wrestling on the air. Maybe people were burning out. You know,
Did you ever have pay issues with ECW in those later years?
not really. No, Paulie always paid me.
And when you went back to WWE, who was the one that helped negotiate that deal to get you back there?
Jr. Jim
Jim
Ross.
Ross.
Yeah.
That's where you had your big record title reign with the hardcore title. Were you expecting to be more high up on the card at that time, or were you kind of not surprised where they kept you? You still had a decent run.
Yeah. No, I was really disappointed. I mean, I really felt like they could have used me better. But I think I had too much personal heat with the office. So
Because you were close with Austin before, was there ever any talk of maybe pairing you with Austin in a feud at that time?
no, they wouldn't have. They wouldn't have put me in that position. They just didn't. I don't think it's that they didn't see me that way. I just think that that it was just heat. I think it was heat, probably. I've gotten a lot of heat in a lot of places for a lot of reasons, and a lot of it was my fault. Some of it wasn't, but a lot of it was. So, I'll take responsibility.
There's some story out there on the internet that the fans wanted me to ask you about. I didn't personally hear about this, but apparently you were showing off for Deborah or something, and Stone Cold
No,
that or
that
something.
no, that's totally what happened. Was I was in the shower, and then Austin and them came in. They decided to film in the locker room where I was in the shower, and I came out of the shower in a towel, and and basically Austin and was there with Deborah, and he was being, and of course he's like, "What the fuck, you know? Why are you coming out with a towel?" And I'm like, "I was in the shower. I didn't know. Fucking, I didn't even know you guys were in here, you know." And so it was just a misunderstanding.
And obviously, you've appeared with him in recent years on his podcast and so forth. So the story is just, I guess, developed over time.
Yeah, it was just one of those misunderstanding things. You know, Austin forgave me for it. You know, but I can see his point of view. You know, to what it looks like to him. You know, but then from my point of view, I didn't even know they were fucking there. You know.
What were the original plans for your feud with Matt Hardy and the Seven Deadly Sins storyline?
That was a whole long thing. That was the greatest storyline I ever came up with. I mean, it's so brilliant. Um, I still eventually I'd like to implement it someplace someday. So I'm not going to really go into details, but um, the yeah, it would have involved a lot of people, um, but in fact, that's the idea I sold Vince on, and that he wanted that it once. I sold him on it to the point that he had me quit Sunday Night Heat and not do a job for Memphis in Memphis for Lawler, which is ridiculous. Like, and then I got heat with Lawler because Lawler thought I didn't want to put him over, and I'm like, that's not. I didn't. I want to. No, why would I not want to put you over? You're the greatest worker in my mind. Of course, I'll put you over anywhere, anytime. Um, the and he had me quit Heat and um and not do the job to Lawler in Memphis, and what else? And something else. And then he asked me to be on a booking committee again, like just like 20 years earlier or 10 years earlier. And but I didn't want to be in a once again, I still didn't want to be in a booking committee, so I turned it down. And then we were gonna start the idea. And then Pat got in Vince's ear, and Pat, because he never liked me, he he goes, he goes, Vince, he goes, you really think he can pull this off? He goes, we should do the idea on Heat instead of Raw. And like, of course I could pull it off, but to Vince, he probably never even like. I bet he didn't even know I was in WCW. I think he just thought I was an ECW guy, and he didn't think so highly of them. Just garbage wrestlers. So I don't think he thought that he knew of what I was capable of. So he's like, all right, we'll do the idea on Heat. And then for like 4 weeks, they wouldn't do the idea. And then finally I had to go to Vince and go, hey, are we going to start this thing? He's like, I thought we already were starting it, but he doesn't follow, the mid card and underneath stuff really that much. So I'm like, no, he's like, all right, we'll start it now. But by then, Vince is one of those guys that he's hot or cold. Like if he's hot for an idea, he's like immediately. That's why he was like, when I want you to join the booking committee, I'm like, I don't want to join. He goes, well, he goes, well, I want you to quit Heat right now. I don't want you to lose the Lawler. I want you to get off of there because he was hot about the idea, excited. But then when he gets cold, but now it's been 4 weeks now since, and now he's cold about it because he's like, well, we'll start it tonight. And then we did. And then in 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks later, I got let go, because whatever. And that was the end of that.
Interesting. Now, I actually heard Vince McMahon say recently that WWE has evolved with now they have like 30 writers or more probably. What do you think about the massive writing team they have now compared to the smaller writing teams they had in the past?
I liked when they had just a booker and maybe a couple people that were subservient to him, you know, and let one guy have the vision. But then again, it's always Vince's vision. So there is really that. He just has, instead of a couple guys underneath him, he has 30 guys, but it's still Vince. Vince is still the one calling all the shots. So I mean, it is kind of the same thing, just he has a more diverse group to choose from. So I don't think there's a problem with that. But I think there has to be one guy in charge, one guy's vision. But I also think that guy has to be replaced every so often because you're going to burn out, and it's always good to get another, somebody else's take on stuff.
How long do you think they're going to keep Pritchard in charge of Raw and SmackDown? I mean, this week I think they hit the all-time lowest viewership
They
ever
did.
of Raw. Yeah, and then SmackDown's been in the 0.4s. I'm not saying that it's necessarily Bruce's fault, but it seems they look for scapegoats every now and then.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't keep that tight. Like I said, I don't watch it. I keep a general idea what's going on. I like to have an idea because it is, my business, but I don't follow it. I don't know. I think he'll be there until Vince decides that he needs somebody else there to change things up to somebody else's vision. But it'll always be Vince though. Like Vince, I think Vince is his own worst enemy because he always has yes men. And I think, I don't think that's a smart idea, but I don't think that's a smart way to do business. But then again, Vince is such a brilliant businessman that's why his company stayed around when everybody else folded because he kept it from a business point of view afloat. Didn't always make the best moves storyline wise, um, and but as far as a businessman, he knows what he's doing, and so. But by storyline wise, by always having yes and men, he's never gonna. You can only. I think it's extremely limiting. You know, unless you find somebody like a Rock or an Austin who just get over so quickly that anything they touch is magic.
Do you think that AJ Styles could be a bigger star? I know you had a hand in his training.
No,
He
I
is
didn't
one of
have.
their top star. No, you didn't?
No, I'd love to take credit for AJ, but no, I can't take any credit other than I've given him some pointers and some ideas. But for the most part, AJ's just he's phenomenal. I mean, he really is. Um, uh, I haven't seen him in years though because I don't watch it, so I don't know what he's doing now. But I heard it's better than ever, so that's great. You know,
And CM Punk is another guy you worked with a little bit early on in his career. He's always a hot topic. Recently, the WWE backstage show he was on got canceled. There's talk again that is he going to show up in AEW? What are your thoughts on him overall?
I like Punk. It's funny. Punk. I always tell this story, but Punk at one point thought he was the greatest worker in the business, and he was anything but. But he eventually did become the greatest worker in the business. So that's pretty cool. That he actually became what he thought he was. And I really respect the hell out of him for joining MMA. Like most people think, oh, what a dummy, but I respect the hell out of him because look, if you're not, if that's what makes you happy, if you have goals, then you got to go after them. And the fact that he was willing to do it, my only downside to that was negative to it is I never would have made my first match UFC. I would have started in Bellator or somewhere else, where they're going to groom you. I wouldn't have made it such a high profile thing. And in fact, last time I saw him, we talked about that, and he said the amount of money they offered him, he had to take it. And I was like, I don't know. I still would have started in Bellator, you know,
Yeah, I
but
think
because
he
they would have given
made
us
at least 500 grand a fight.
there's a Bellator, but he didn't need the money. That's part of the thing. If you don't need the money, and Bellator, they would have protected him. They would have given him somebody he could beat,
Yeah.
and they would have groomed him. Whereas UFC, they just throw you to the wolves, which is cool too, which is also, that's where people are made. You get made that way, but you can get broke that way too.
And of course, you were NWA champion when you were in TNA. That was a big run for you. What are your overall thoughts of your big run that you had with that company?
I'm grateful to them for allowing me to finish up my career in a better way than the way I went out in WWE, So I'll always be grateful for that. I had a lot of fun there. I had a lot of disappointment there. A lot of both sides of emotions. The I think that well, okay. Um, I think that I'm also lucky that Jeff Jarrett, for publicly bad mouthing, or the booking and stuff. Which really, if you think about it, okay, look, if I ran a company and people started bad mouthing the product, I'd fire them, or I'd talk to them, and if they kept doing it, I'd fire them. Like, why would you let somebody bad mouth your product, even if the product was shitty? You know what I mean? And the fact that Jeff, kept me around and let me keep working there, no matter how bad I buried the company, because when I was upset about it, I think speaks a lot to his class. I think that's so. I've always respected Jeff for that. Um, and but by the same token, I think they could have done so many things different and so many things to grow the company, and so they made so many mistakes. But look, they're his made mistakes to make. It's his company.
Are you surprised WWE ended up putting Jarrett in the Hall of Fame after all that went on between the two over the years?
Yeah, I am surprised about that, but Jeff's a really good guy, though. I mean, everybody likes Jeff. Even people that hated the way he used them like Jeff. Jeff's just a really likable guy. You know.
Did you ever party with Jeff? Because I've heard from several people he was a big partier too at various times.
Yeah, no, I was never. We were never really hung in the same circles, and my partying came to an end. Way back in 99, 2000, no, 2000, I guess. I think that's when my partying came to it. A sting right before I went to WWE. It ended. I got clean.
What was your favorite part of your TNA run?
Um, I don't know. I like the Clockwork Orange matches because I came up with the design. I like the Hangman's horror match. I think it was called. I think I came up with that design too. Um, I hated when when Bandy shaved my head and scalped me. That
That
did
was a
some.
fan question. Who came up with that idea?
It was my idea to get my hair cut, but I didn't expect Bandy to use the wrong side of the sheep shears.
Okay, so it was painful.
Oh, it was really fucking painful. You have no idea how painful. Like literally, like blood's pouring down my face. I got so mad, but it was Vandy, and me and him have always been really close friends. And I got to the back, and I wanted to punch him so badly because it hurt. And he didn't mean it. He just wasn't paying attention. He was so enraptured in the moment. He was like orgasmic for him in this big angle because he loves wrestling so much. And 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 I wanted to punch him, and I pulled my arm back to swing, and I would have hated myself if I would have really hit him because A, that's not me, and B, he's my friend. So, but as I'm going to swing at him, I turned it into a working forearm to the chest. Like, luckily, like halfway through the punch, I was able to get my sanity back and go, okay, I can't hit him for this, and I give him a working punch in the chest, working forearm in the chest.
You've said in other interviews that your dad worked for the National Enquirer.
Yeah.
Um, you had a fan question. They wanted to know if you think that helped your creativity in the long run, having a father that worked for a tabloid like that.
It didn't affect it one way or the other. They were the highest paying newspaper in the world. Like they pay more. They paid like 4 times what the Washington Post or what the New York Times paid. And my dad was like a preeminent journalist, and he was the number 2 guy there for like 10, 15 years. He was a big shot. The So yeah, but I always used to tease him. I'd go, "Yeah, Dad, I followed in your footsteps. You work for a fake paper, and I work for a fake wrestling company."
And you were doing DDP yoga at one time. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, I like doing it. I stopped doing it because of the coronavirus, and because I stopped having a trainer because of the coronavirus. Um, and but also it also I have such damage in my shoulder. Like when I had the left shoulder, I had a half replacement put in it. You don't get they said to get the half replacement instead of the full because it lasts longer. Um, but the orthopedic surgeon, the head orthopedic surgeon for the Atlanta Braves, said I had the 2 worst shoulders he's ever seen. So I was really proud of that. But if they're going to be terrible, they might as well be the worst. But so I had that one fixed up, and I can still only rotate it to there. That's good. That's like I'm happy with this because I can put it behind my back now. The other one only rotates to here. That's terrible. Only reaches up to here, and can't go behind my back. Can only go to there. So I really got to get this one done. And I've tried even with the yoga, it won't stretch out. It won't like. So it's also difficult to do a lot of the yoga because I can't use that shoulder. So when I stopped having a trainer, I lost interest in doing it because it's a lot of work, and it was always making my shoulder worse because even though I protect it during the exercises, it's still damaging. So, and also I didn't expect the coronavirus to go this long. I figured we'd have a. I didn't count on the president being so incompetent, but that's neither here nor there. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna start doing it again soon. But this shoulder needs surgery badly, or stem cells, or something.
Obviously, with the lockdown, there's no wrestling going on, but are you still doing indie bookings despite those
No, I
issues?
got I got pre-existing conditions, so I'm not taking any bookings until this thing has a till we come out the other side of this with a vaccine or something. Because I have type 2 diabetes. I've also had a heart attack, so I have a stint. Um, the yeah, so yeah, so I'm with the pre-existing conditions. I don't want to go on the road. Like the other day, Luke Gallows had a pay-per-view, uh, and he wanted me to come do a spot with him, but I was like, man, I just can't. I can't. I don't want to be around the boys because, I'm gonna not. No one's gonna be wearing masks probably. At least because they're doing stuff on camera, and people are gonna. There's gonna be hugging and photos, and people will be like, yeah, let's take a photo, and I'm like, I don't want to. I don't want to. I mean, as much as I want to see the boys, I just don't want to. Take a chance, especially now with it flaring up so bad.
Is it true that you were doing some writing for Impact in recent years?
No, no, no. They didn't ask me to do that. The last episode before the coronavirus, they were in Atlanta and they had me agent some matches, and there was some talk about me coming in there, but then the coronavirus hit, so everything changed.
So you were back there for Steiner's heart attack.
Yeah, that was crazy. Yeah, they literally saved his life there. The EMTs there at the building literally saved his life. Like when the paramedics, or I forget who it was. I think there was two EMTs at the building or something. But when the paramedics came, they said, "Man, you really need to thank those two guys because they literally saved his life."
Wow.
Yeah,
Have you been to Steiner's Shoney's since you live in the Atlanta area?
yeah. I was there. I've been there before. It's not near me. I mean, it's like 30 minutes away, 25 minutes. I don't go there, but I've been there before.
How did you get along with Steiner over your career? You've been in the same companies. You said Rick is a buddy of yours.
Yeah, me and Rick get along really well. Me and Scott, we get along fine. I mean, but we've never had long conversations, or warm showers into the middle of the night or anything. But we get along fine.
And a fan wanted to know your max bench press, squat, and deadlift in your peak.
I can actually do some bragging on this. When I was in college, I got off the gas, because I was on the gas a lot in college. Because I was 150, I was 160 pounds when I started. No, wait, I was 129 pounds when I started lifting, and then I got up to like I think I got up to like 180 something. Went in the Marine Corps, came back, I was 170, and because I took a semester off of college to go in the Marine Corps. But then I was 170, and I was like, nah, I got to do some gas. And so I did a bunch of steroids and finally got up to like 220, after years of training. I've been training for since I was like 16 or 15. And, but I don't have the genetics for bodybuilding at all or for weightlifting. Like, I mean, I really had to work out hard and take a lot of steroids. And, anyway, so I was in college. I took some. I'm sorry. I took myself off the roids because I wanted to see how much I could lift without it. And I entered a powerlifting meet, and I weighed 209. I was too lazy to cut weight to 198 to the next weight level, so I was up. I was against the 220s, and I did a 550 squat, which is really good. A 570 deadlift, and a measly. This is how bad I was at benching because I got long arms. A 340 bench with a bench shirt.
Still better
That's
than
really
a lot.
bad.
But
That's
that's a
really
great squat and deadlift.
Yeah, but the bench is horrible.
And what town had the best groupies for wrestling in your experience?
Portland had great groupies. Portland was awesome for that. Like, because you're in the same town every week. The same shows like 3 or 4 nights a week. You're in the same town every week, And so, and then yeah, there were spot show towns, because you're on the road 6 nights a week. It was awesome for that.
Marty Jannetty mentioned to me that he had been with approximately 5,000 women.
I'm sure.
What would you estimate your numbers to be at?
I stopped counting at 100, and that was in 1984 or something. 1980. Wait, when was it? 1987. I stopped counting at 100. Like
Okay.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to keep a record any longer, and plus it was I didn't want to. It got ridiculous. I figured it. So yeah. So I think it was. I think I just graduated college, and I hit 100 women.
I guess you and Marty would have been quite a pair on the road.
Yeah, totally. He was so much fun to be around. Man, that guy, he was a chick magnet. Oh my God.
Did you ever experience any of his ribs?
No, he never ribbed me. I mean, maybe this might be considered a rib. Like sometimes he would leave the women he picked up, he'd leave them on my doorstep in the morning. Like and then, and try and get me to give him a ride home. But,
Yes.
yeah, but I don't think I ever did though.
And just back to Sunny for a minute. I just realized there was a fan question on her. What were your thoughts on her relationship with Chris Candido?
It was a strange couple. I mean, all the cheating she did on him. I don't know if he was okay with it or not. Um, let's just say that I hope he was. You know,
And for the Montreal screw job, you had a few fans that wanted me to ask your opinion on that. Some people feel it was the greatest work in wrestling history. Any possibility on that?
yeah, I don't think it was a work. I think it was a real. I mean, like, yeah, I just don't. The way everything played out, I just don't. And I was one of the first. I maybe have been the first worker to realize the Pillman thing was a work. So I'm like right away when Pillman did that thing, he did something, and I go, and I remember Disco going to me, "Wow, you see what Pillman did?" I go, "It's a work." He goes, "No," I go, "They wouldn't show him on camera." You know, right away. So I mean, I right away. So I'm pretty good at sussing that out. But I would think that that's a shoot, though, the Bret Hart thing, because there's there's too many things that were that you that would have just not fallen the way they did, or it would have been too detrimental for both to even take that chance. I think.
And I understand at one point you were booking for Billy Corgan back when he had an independent company, I think based in Chicago. They've recently lost their executive producer due to all these speaking out allegations. Could you see yourself working for Billy Corgan again in the future? They could probably really use a mind like yours, and you live in Atlanta.
Well, I didn't book for Billy before. I worked with him in the office. Like I was like his assistant, I guess. But yeah, me and Billy get along really well. But I think Billy's shutting it down, is from what I hear. Like
Okay.
so I don't. Yeah. Plus Billy likes to. Billy wants to. The thing is Billy really does the booking. Billy does all the booking as far as at least he did it with the Resistance Pro. Um, he liked me there to have my wrestling mind, so I could say yay or nay to ideas. Like if they make sense, if they don't. But ultimately he was the final say on everything, as he should have been. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think I heard from the grapevine. I heard that Billy's not opening it back up. He's really disillusioned.
Well, really, they only had a YouTube show, and as you know, you can't fund an entire wrestling company based on 200,000 YouTube views a month. Like,
Yeah, but it was actually they were starting to make a profit though, believe it or not. The way they had it budgeted, and it was all I think that I'm not saying anything out of turn, but I think it was all part of a plan to go bigger with it. But it was just it was basically that was his stepping stone to getting a TV deal. And that's what he was working towards, from what I gather.
is it true you dated Trish Stratus back in 1999?
Never, never.
Interesting.
No, I would never lie about women I've been with.
What about Sunny? Were you with her?
No, no comment.
Okay. And for all the wrestlers watching this, I was a heel when I wrestled. I always like to know your opinion on what makes a great heel?
Um, he has to get frustrated. So, like most people, like in the way the match is set up is the way people are taught. It's the babyface shines, the heel gets heat, and the babyface makes a comeback. What I've decided in my is what I think is more important is not the babyface shines, but the heel gets frustrated. Then the heel gets heat because he cheats to get the heat, and they make babyface makes a comeback. And it's because if the heel doesn't get frustrated, he has no reason to cheat. And that's really the crux of every match is the heel cheats, gets the advantage, and then the babyface has to make a comeback. And that's what makes wrestling so exciting because the babyface always has to make a comeback. But if the heel doesn't get frustrated in the beginning, then what's he gonna? Why is he cheating? Just well, he cheats anyway. Well, yeah, but it's more exciting if he has a reason to cheat. And so I think that's part of it. I think if he has a point of view, I think the best heels always have a point of view, but it's either skewed or like Bret Hart when he was said, "I should be a hero. You people should love me. I should be a hero." And he had a point of view. He did have a good point, except that if he was a real hero, he would have walked off into the sunset. He wouldn't have complained that he didn't that he wasn't that he should have been a hero, right?
Yeah.
So he had a point of view, which is what made him so good. It was brilliant it was amazing as a heel. Um, so I think you have a point of view. I think if you're, I think it's also important as a heel not to be funny unless you're going to be mean funny. Like Jim Cornette was funny, hilarious, so you liked him. Paul Lee was mean funny, so you didn't like him. You know what I mean? Because if you're too funny as a heel, people are going to like you because comedy being funny is likable. So I think you have to be I think that's important to just to not be likable whatsoever, But I think you're also, if you're a really good heel, 10% of the audience is always going to love you no matter what, and there's nothing you can do about that. But when it gets over 10 or 15%, you have to know how to show your ass to to turn the tide and get the people back to hating you again. Like when the Rock was the corporate champion. First he was like they started making him the people's champion as he was still a heel, and then just as he was about to turn the corner and become a super baby face, he switched and went back to being a heel as the corporate champion. And it was such a he showed his ass so perfectly because it was all about the money to him, not the fans, and that was what made people really hate him, because they were starting to like him too much, and it was brilliantly done. That was some brilliant ass booking.
And for people that want to get more of your opinions and stories, you have the Raven Effect
Podcast.
podcast. Where can people subscribe to that?
Pretty much everywhere, except I think Spotify doesn't carry us for some reason, or they always have all they have is reruns or something. I don't know, something weird with Spotify. Like they've gone there, but it's MLW. It's the Raven Effect podcast. We're wrestling adjacent because we don't talk about much wrestling. Because you can talk about wrestling anywhere. I think I'm pretty funny, and I have a skewed point of view that's pretty entertaining. And so it's always, I think it's a fun listen. It's a good hour. It's entertaining. And if you don't like it, then then you have bad taste.
And you're on social media as well. Where could people look you up on there?
Yeah, basically, I just do Twitter. Instagram's too much of a pain in the ass. Facebook, I'm only on because I post on Twitter, and it also posts on Facebook. But the Raven Effect at the Raven Effect, and basically this consists of my Twitter career. Is I find pictures, like really good art pictures, like photographs, and then I caption them, and I try and make it funny captions, and that's what I do like one a day, and then I respond back to the people who like or dislike or have something to say, but yeah, but basically it's I'm a sloth. I'm pretty lazy. Hey,
For
before we, never mind. I'll wait till you. I'll wait till we're finished. I had
I,
something to ask you.
we're pretty much almost done. I just have one question since you brought up MLW. You're part of their radio network. Any chance of seeing you pop up there?
Yeah, you never know. We definitely talked about it, but the coronavirus screwed everything up. So the but yeah, Court Bauer's a really good guy. I like Court. I really like him a lot, and also I like that he gives me credit too. For having some input into his for giving him some insight into the business. Like to me, it only like it seems like people never want to admit that people like when people help them. Like to me, it's like I think it shows more like because they think it shows weakness if you learn if you had help. But I think it shows strength. That you put people over. That you have respect for that. So like if it wasn't for the grappler, I never would be half the talent I am. I mean, he let me pick his brain every night. Like I rode for 2 years basically. Like I rode with him probably for like the first year or so. Um, and I was the green kid, so I always had to drive. But hey, that's fair because that's the green guy's always got to drive. And but we'd always drive his truck, so he put the miles on his truck, not on my car. And and he wouldn't necessarily go out of his way to teach me, but if I wanted, but anything I wanted to learn, if I could pick his brain, he would teach me. Like so, like one day we're riding, I was like, I want to be in a cage match, and he's like, because a cage match looks cool, you know what I mean? I don't even work in a year and a half, and he goes, well, what are you going to do the week before? I go, I don't know. He goes, well, figure it out. So I was like, all right, what if we do this in my angle, and then I know we have a cage match. He goes, yeah, but what are you going to do the week after? I don't know. Figure it out. And so he taught me like through that kind of teaching how to book, how to understand psychology, how to like everything, and he was there, man. I got so much out of him. And that's a really good autobiography. If you ever want to read one, read his autobiography. It's fascinating. It's the grappler. It's Lynn Denton, not Len. Everybody thinks it's Len, but it's actually a girl's name, Lynn, Lynn.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, he was. People don't realize it because it was territorial, but he was only 19 or 20 years old, and he was working on top for Watts. And Watts made him a wrestling character, the grappler, and he only weighed like probably 220 at the time. He's like 5'10", and Watts was all about big guys. So to put a guy with a mask on top at that size for Watts, and he worked on top in the Superdome with the Junkyard Dog. He had like all in one angle he was blinded, walking with a cane, and yet he had all the belts. And man, but and then there's a whole reason why his career didn't stay on the same level as it did, and it's really interesting. It's a really interesting book if you like wrestling. Which I obviously anybody watching this likes wrestling, so I highly recommend it.
And there was something you wanted to say before we close off here?
Yeah, I was going to ask you. So what was the deal with you and Abdullah? I always heard about that, but
Oh,
or do you not
well,
want to talk about it now, or you want to talk about it off the air?
no, it doesn't matter. People know the story, but basically, he had a match with me where I was supposed to bleed. He was supposed to bleed, but it turns out that he had had Hep C for at least 10 years before he wrestled me. But he was never supposed to cut me in that match. And he took it upon himself to cut me, even though I was already bleeding from my own cuts, with the same razor blade
Oh,
it used on himself. Which is why when I found out I had Hep C through when I got signed by WWE, the medical tests, we ended up getting his blood work, finding out he had the history of it, going to court over it. We won in Canada and the US, but unfortunately, there was a 2-year delay in getting the lawsuit endorsed in the US. And in that time, he shut down his main restaurant and transferred properties. So we never actually saw anything out of it. But he was found guilty of negligence, assault, and battery out of this situation.
wow! I know that is almost word for word what I heard. So I guess I did hear the right story, but I always felt so bad for you for that. Like I always had my sympathies because that's just some bullshit.
Yeah, it sucks because you finally make it. And then it's like, oh, you're not getting the contract. And by the way, you now have to fight this disease. And the first treatment didn't work either. So I had to actually pay 80 grand for the second one that did work. But at least I got cured.
Oh, thank God. Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you if you got cured by it of it.
Yeah, it took about 5 years, but I thank God I got cured.
Yeah, congratulations on that at least. So the how bad was the Hep C? Like, I mean, Did you suffer badly because of it, or were you able to get cured before you suffered from it?
Luckily, well, I did have some liver damage from it, but luckily, the worst part was, well, not luckily, was the treatments because at that time, the treatments were very harsh. So
Uh,
that was the worst part. You had like bug under the skin itching and 45-pound weight loss. It was very similar to chemotherapy. So that was actually the toughest.
you were like a state level champion wrestler too,
And
right?
national, I was
National
national.
level, right? The national level.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about going after Abdullah, or
In a fight,
yeah?
what am I going to do? He's in a wheelchair.
Oh, is he? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. Yeah, I was always curious. Like, cause that's all I known about you, other than Dreamer put you over to me. Because I think Dreamer did a match with you where he tapped to you. I think.
We did like some weird angle in the match, and people thought that it was a shoot finish.
Right, right, something like, because
Yeah.
Dreamer's big thing is that he never taps out. Like, if it was a shoot, I'd never tap out. And
Yeah.
so like, how Dreamer believes his own wrestling character, like he acts like he does, but he really kind of does.
Yeah.
And the fact that he tapped to you, I was like, wow, that speaks volumes for you, because Dreamer doesn't want to tap to anybody.
Thank you. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap this up to the fans?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'm loyal. I'm grateful that you've been so loyal all these years. I mean, we started out talking about the fans in the beginning. That's the other thing that I want to say about the fans is the is part of the problem with the boys is they don't realize, or at least they didn't, that if it wasn't for the fans, we would have no income. They're the ones paying for our living. So, when you talk down to the fans, or as they're just a bunch of dumb marks, you're just doing them a disservice. I'm really grateful that I've had such loyal fans all these years. I'm really, really lucky to have the fans I have, because they've always stood behind me, and they've always supported me. And I've done really well, and I'm very lucky and very grateful to have the career I had.
Thank you for watching the Hannibal TV. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and click the subscribe button to not miss any of our latest shoot interviews, match videos, or news updates. Support us on patreon.com for $1.99 a month to watch our full shoot interviews ad-free and help our channel grow. Follow us on Twitter at the Hannibal TV for instant updates.